Good afternoon, everyone. This is Victor from NewStars Migration, and last week I decided to do something new as we entering into the new financial year. As I looking into a financial year with more changes and possibly more positive policies for all those applicants. So I decided to do a weekly live section, weekly live talks. I call Victor's weekly talks from this Friday. So basically from this Friday and all the Fridays to come, if I'm happy and if our company do not have Happy Friday afternoon drinks, I will do a live section roughly around 5 o'clock to summarize all those useful and most important updates regarding to migration and education, and I'll try to talk about those things in around 10 to 15 minutes. So this is first week to start, and I hope you get informative information from these programs, from this week and all those programs in the future. So first thing, there was actually a big news this week. It was coming from interview sources from the Australian Financial Review. So the Australian Financial Review had an interview with the Home Affairs Minister 𝒂𝒆𝒌𝒍𝒚, and there was some information. I think some of you already got those information from some sources. The governments will prioritize the processing of almost 60,000 permanent applicants lodged by skilled workers based overseas. So the key information here is they will prioritize permanent applications for those offshore permanent applications, and the numbers given is roughly about 60,000 places. So the reason they're doing this is because in the past 2 weeks, according to the data from the department, about 81% of permanent visa was actually granted to those already in Australia, in the country. That means those people are staying in the country, they're probably holding bridging visa. So these are being prioritized in the past 2 years. For those who apply offshore, not in Australia, that was not prioritized in the past 2 years. So now they're starting to change the angle to those offshore applicants. One of the major reasons to do so is to increase the labor, skilled laborers in Australia, because those people apply overseas. Once they permanent visa grant, believing most of the people will enter Australia to start their new life in Australia, and in the meantime bring skills back to Australia. So that will be the focus. We got some inquiries, and a lot of people discussion about this news since the news came out. That is, first of all, if the offshore applications being prioritized, doesn't necessarily means the onshore applications were getting slower. Not necessarily. From the information we're getting so far, probably what's going to happen is they were trying focusing on the offshore rather than saying they will slow down the onshore application, because overall what happened to Australian migration system is there's such big blockage in terms of visa applications, not just permanent residency visa, but all the different type of visas. They are waiting for so long. So I think the department is starting to aware of that. In the meantime, all the businesses are calling for skilled migrants. So the department is addressing this issue. Alternatively, they have to allocate more sources available for assessing visa application. But they just mentioned to you they were starting to looking more into the offshore applicants. Does not necessarily means they will slow down the rest of the applications. And will this just be one of the propaganda, or like the previous governments was saying something but not doing something in the meantime? But this time is probably different, as we pay attention to all those media coverage and all those attentions. Everybody was talking about migration. Everybody was talking about labor shortage. Now I think the new government is actually serious, considering changing and making some different approach to the visa processing fast. In the meantime, there was two events I would like to things I want to address your attention. That is actually in early September, the 1st and 2nd of September, it will be held in Parliament House. There will be a job and skills summit held by the Parliament. Of course, the discussion will be related to job and skills. And in the meantime, when we talk about job and skills, temporary residents and those migrations will be, I believe, will be part of the discussion. So that's one of the events you should pay attention to. Any news will come out. We'll give you a very detailed update at that time. Second is the new financial budget that will be held no later than the 25th October 2022. So the new Treasurer, Jean Kelmus, will introduce a new financial budget. And within the budget, there will be the migration planning. And recently, there was a lot of voices and a lot of discussion about increase of the overall migration planning from 160,000 to 200,000 places. There was a discussion. There was a lot of negotiation and a lot of surveys carrying on. And even the Home Affairs Minister Claire O'Brien was, when her taking the interview from Australian Financial Review, she admitted that is discussion carry on about the possibility. So we're really looking forward into those figures, particularly the overall migration figure being increased to somewhere around 200,000 places. Of course, that decision wouldn't be made in a week or two, probably in the coming 6 months or for longer time. So that's the biggest news this week. Government will prioritize offshore applicants, and in the meantime, they are seriously considering the discussions with different industries and different stakeholders about the overall migration planning. So that's what I'm saying. I think this financial year, with the government level, we're going to see some major changes that will actually carry on into this year and the following years to come. So that's the biggest news this year. Second, I would like to talk about some detailed things about state government level, state government policy level. First of all, of course, ACT migration. As we all aware, on the 13th of July, ACT government actually issued the first invitation round of metrics. And from the invitations, the overall summary is ACT government issued 111 to onshore applicants and 112 to offshore applicants, 7 to small business owner, 1 to employer-sponsor visa holders. So overall, over 230 places actually issued. It's a bit more than what we see in the past few rounds. So we take it as a positive gesture. That is, the ACT migration is starting to issue more places, probably because they're assuming they will have more places available this financial year. It's 230 places. So because the place issued increase, they bring down the points as well. On the invitation summary to different occupations, we see some occupation get invited at the points of 65 for 491. So that's a positive gesture. But again, within this invitation round, those people, and we also apply for some nomination in the past 2 weeks. We get some nomination as well, but the problem is those successful nomination did not get EOI confirmed because ACT governments, like other state governments, has not received the final allocations from the department. So some applicants having their nomination confirmed, but not the EOI confirmed. But we're taking as a positive gesture. ACT is starting to issue more places to the applicants. Eventually, as time goes, if they have more places available, they issue more invitation, they will bring down the points. We just have to wait and see. That brings to the next questions. Do we see any confirmation about nomination places? Till this moment, the answer is still no. Every state government's waiting for the final confirmation. There were some rumors going on. I have some clients came to me saying, because they also aware of the budget in October, they're starting to suspect that maybe the government will hold until October, then to restart the migration plans across different states. At this stage, my point of view is that's very less likely the department will on hold the migration plan and till October, because that means they waste 3-4 months of time. All the state governments will be waiting 3-4 months of time. I think that they don't want to see this situation. It's just a waste of time across different states, and actually making the work for the rest of the financial year more difficult. So we're probably seeing something that is area state governments will get certain kind of allocation, certain amount of allocation from the Department Home Affairs first, so they can start the program, and then maybe in September or after the budget, then they will get a rest of budget, rest of allocation numbers. But overall, we're looking increasing across most of states. Another big news last week is about Tasmanian government. So Tasmanian governments also announced their information about migration policy change. Basically, the rule is from this financial year, the Tasmanian government was starting to doing something quite similar to ACT governments, but not exactly. What they're doing is, in the future, when you apply for Tasmanian nomination, you have to submit of express of interest, so we call ROI, register of interest, and then you wait for your invitation in order to apply for the nomination. Previously, we all know in Tasmanian, you can apply for your state nomination once you satisfy the criteria, lodge all the documents. But now, this financial year, you have to wait for your invitation, then you get your nomination. So, and in the meantime, the Tasmanian government is saying those most competitive ones will be able to invite to apply for the nomination, and then even summarize a few of the criteria they taking into consideration in terms of determining who is more competitive, such as most of them are actually about employment. For example, industrial employment, duration of employment, and the role of employment, connection about your employment and skill assessment and study, salary of the employment, and the offers, and even they consider the business. So the business you're working for, the turnover, the location of the employment, and then they consider other factors such as length of residency in Tasmania, English proficiency level, and the other factors as well. So overall, I think the most important thing in Tasmanian in the next financial year, in this financial year, if you want to get a better chance for invitation, it's all about employment, pretty much. But then it brings down to a critical question, that is, how would they actually issue the invitation? We have no idea, yes, because if you think in this way, they told you you had to register your express of interest first, then we'll issue an invitation to you based on the information you provide, and it will determine some people are more competitive than the others. But the problem is, how would you be able to show those evidence or show those information to Tasmanian officer, and how this officer would determine who is more competitive than the rest? For example, I just give you one of the example I come up with in my mind. For example, there's one person who is accountant, second is also the accountant. The first accountant get a job with a salary about $60,000 a year, but he or she only staying in Tasmania for 2 years. The second one staying in Tasmania only for 6 months of time, but in the meantime, this applicant gets an offer over $100,000. So how would you be able to prioritize or determine which one is more competitive? So this is something yet to be defined. I think this is something we don't see because they're not giving the points for all those criteria. So if you give them the points, eventually the applicant A will have 75. For example, the second applicant will have 85 points. That's pretty easy. You pick 85 over 75. But now it's all about descriptions. It's all about some criteria of each individual. So I think if they don't do the point testing basis, then it will make this invitation a bit of a chaos eventually, because the officer have a big right to decide, I like this one, not like this one. I'll take this invitation rather than this one. Eventually, you don't see, not necessarily seeing any kind of rules out of invitation. But again, the government saying there will be more discussion carry on before those things being published on Tasmanian website. Again, at the meantime, Tasmania is saying we are also waiting for allocation. But just keep in mind, Tasmanian government now is changing their policy. That is, the invitation rules also starting to apply in Tasmanian. You need to be invited in order to apply for the nomination. That's a big change. And in the meantime, this week, Victoria government also update on their website. That is, they also saying the 2020 and 2023 programs will expand the eligibility criteria across both 491 and 190, and will be open to offshore. Basic means the criteria for this year's Victoria's nomination will be more general than last financial year. They will pretty much expand the criteria, which means make more people eligible, and in the meantime they open to offshore. This also indication, as I'm saying, Victoria government probably also request for more places for the Department of Home Affairs. That's why they're making the decision. And they also say they are waiting for the confirmation in order to open the program. In the meantime, this week, Queensland government also published on their website as well, saying they are all ready for the nomination criteria. So pretty much Queensland government is also waiting for the allocation number in order to reopen the program. That is quite special about Queensland government, because usually in the past couple of financial years, Queensland sometimes waited until mid of the financial year, or a few months from July to restart their program. But this financial year, at the early stage in July, they started to say, I'm ready, I'm just waiting for state or federal government to give out places in order to open the program. So I would take that as a positive gesture as well. So this week we see Victoria government, Queensland governments, all and Tasmanian government all indicates they will give you a better policy. Just waiting for the allocation from the department. In the meantime, ACT already issued the first invitation round without receiving the final confirmation figures from the federal government. I take those figures as general positive, just indication that these state governments were receiving more places. So that's pretty much about this week. I think this is the first week to start, and we'll share you more information next Friday about the policy news, migration news, and education news as well. Thank you very much for following this channel.